One. Hello, everyone, and welcome to A New Direction. My name is Jay Izzo, and oh, wowza, he's back. I can't believe it. Shawn Ryan and the book, Getting Gear. He's back with us again. I love this book. I love him. Okay, I mean, let's not get this wrong. It's not like I love the book more than I love him, because he absolutely wrote the book. But I do love the book, but I love him too, because he's just, man, he's so thought-provoking. And his book, Getting Gear, by the way, the 7 gears that drive strategy to results. Here's the deal. We're going to talk about this today. You may have a strategy, and Shawn is extremely happy that you do have a strategy. And it may or may not be a good strategy, and he's going to kind of help us diagnose that a little bit, you know. And then we're going to talk about maybe a little bit of results. But here's the key to this book, Getting Gear. Execution. That's the key. What are you doing to execute your strategy so that you do get the results? That's what this book's about, is really execution. And there are these 7 gears that Shawn has really pulled out of all of this, that when connected together is going to actually take your strategy, execute it through those 7 gears, which is high energy, and then is going to give you the results. It's brilliant. I'm just telling you right now, it's brilliant. You're going to love it. You're going to love him. He's fantastic. But let's do what we do every week before we get to him. And then as I walk you through the 4 areas of your life, because we are 4-part people. We're physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual people. Listen, folks, we need to be working on ourselves every day. I follow a former Delta Force guy. Some of you may follow him too on Instagram. His name is Pat McNamara. He was part of the Black Hawk Down Delta Force that was in Mogadishu. And he has his own Instagram channel, I guess you'd call it. It's called Pat Mac. And anyway, it's fantastic. But one of the things he says is that if your clone from yesterday should show up today, could you whip its tail? And it's a pretty good question, because what it means is you've got to be able to work on yourself physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually every single day, so that if your clone from yesterday could show up, are you better than that? And it's kind of an interesting thought process, and that's why I do this, is because I want us to be on top of ourselves, to go, am I better today in these 4 areas of my life than I was yesterday? Right. So, you know, when I take you through these things, I ask you on a scale of 1 to 10 to rate yourself, right? 1 being miserable, 10 being outstanding. It's not that whatever that number is that we're judging you. That's not the point. But that's your starting number. And then how do we get better from that? So if you're this today, how do we get you better than whatever that number is tomorrow, so that you have a higher number? That's the point. So let's start physically. So if you were to rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 physically, in terms of exercise, eating right, getting enough water, getting enough sleep, if you were to rate yourself on that scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate yourself? Okay, what would that number be? Now listen, 5 is average. So if you said I'm a 5, okay. So if your clone should show up tomorrow, right? He was a 5 today, so you want to be a 5.5 tomorrow. So how do you get from a 5 to a 5.5 tomorrow? Okay, all right, that's your first number, all right, whatever the number is, great. Second number is the mental number, right? What are you doing to increase your knowledge, increase your wisdom and understanding of what you do in your job, what you're doing in your life? Maybe you're doing something to expand both halves of your brain, like take up an instrument, foreign language, maybe read a book. This is a pretty good one. I would read that one. What are you doing to be an active participant and not a mental loafer, as my wife likes to call everybody who just sits there and just lets things happen to them, right? Right. So how would you rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10? Got that? Okay, so you got 2 numbers. Third number is the emotional number, right? We look at 2 things emotionally. We look at 1 is how well are you able to control your emotions in the midst of chaos and in the midst of pressure and stress, which, by the way, we're all under. Right. And then the second part is how well are you able to tap in and understand the emotions of others, which requires empathetic listening and also a vocabulary to understand it. So in those 2 areas, if you put those together, how would you rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 emotionally? Right. 5 being average. Right. So now you have 3 numbers. So then the final number is the spiritual number. And then I want to ask you this, right? And right, whether you feel like you're spiritual or not, we're all spiritual on some level. We all have faith in something. We all believe in something. When things go horribly wrong, we run to something that we believe in, that to try to give us peace or centeredness or whatever that may be in. And it could be God, it could be nature, it could be meditation, it could be something that you run to that gets you back there. And you have to ask yourself a question: is it working for you? And maybe you haven't found it yet. Maybe you haven't found that thing. The thing I would tell you is keep searching, right? Because there is something out there, right? I promise you there's something out there that can get you centered and into a sense of peace. Just keep searching. And because when you find it, I could tell you that what happens is, no matter what happens in the world, no matter what happens, you can get back to a place of centeredness and peace in the midst of chaos. And that's the spiritual aspect. So how would you rate yourself in that area on a scale of 1 to 10? Now you have 4 numbers, and those 4 numbers are like the legs of a chair. If the legs of the chair are uneven and you try to sit in it, first of all, it's difficult and it's not very good on your posture, is it? And then the second thing is, if the chair is too low and all your numbers are too low, then what happens? Right? Well, what happens is then you can't eat at a table and eat healthily. So let's talk about Shawn Ryan, whose legs are all at the right height and all equal. He is a world-renowned business consultant, speaker, trainer, and executive coach. As the founder of WhiteWater International Consulting, he has worked internationally with companies such as Disney, Nucor Steel, and FedEx. With more than 2 decades of industry experience, Shawn is highly regarded for his ability to guide organizations through complex transformational change in what he describes as a world of perpetual whitewater. He helps clients formulate winning strategies and then deliver outstanding results through platforms, including SXR, strategy, execution, results, used by startups of Fortune 500 clients. When not traveling for business and speaking engagements, Shawn resides with his family in New Brunswick, Canada, where he serves as a taste tester for his spouse's catering business. He also provides transportation service for his son and his friends, and he boats, he skis, he bikes, and when he has time and when his knees allow it. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show. Welcome back again, Shawn T. Ryan. Welcome back, Shawn.
Jay, thanks for having me back. Glad to be here.
Thanks, man. Hey, you listen. We get to chat for the show. I wish sometimes people would. I allowed people to tune in to what we do before the show, because actually it's kind of fun. And you and I, we had big smiles on our faces because you were back, and it was just great to have you. So I really want to say this in front of everybody as well. I welcome back, Shawn. And I also want to say this. Listen, we are in over 80 countries around the world, and we are also on AM/FM 24/7, coast to coast. And I want to thank everybody who listens out there, and people who are watching live on YouTube and LinkedIn and Facebook and listening on Castbox FM. Look, I know you have a lot of choices to listen to podcasts and things like that, and I am really grateful. And I would ask you to do one favor. First of all, share this. If you're watching me live right now, or if you're listening on a podcast later, share this with a friend or even an enemy. we do, and then give us a positive review. We really do that because, and especially because you're going to love Shawn. So Shawn, let's dig in. Last time we were here, we talked a lot about, we only got through about the first 3 gears, but let's give people a quick run through. One of the things that you have in your chapter, digging in, maneuvering through this world of perpetual whitewater, is you have this title said, moving beyond strategy of just sucking less. Yes, just sucking less. And I want to start there because, I think for some people that is a strategy. I just don't want to suck as much as I sucked yesterday. And, right. But that's not really a strategy. So let's talk about when we say strategy, I guess kind of what are we talking about, and what makes a good strategy versus a bad strategy? Is that a fair question?
It's 100% a fair question. And where we got to that concept of the strategy of just sucking less is just sucking less than my competition. Because what we found is there are an enormous number of companies, maybe small startups, even have grown to medium-sized businesses that have just never really thought about what's our strategy? What makes us unique? What makes customers want to pick up the phone or click on a link and buy something from us versus anybody else that they could choose? So when we think about strategy, we think about how do you position yourself in the marketplace that's unique, that creates competitive advantage, that provides value that people want, that's different than all of the competitors out there. So the strategy of just not sucking less is you haven't thought about it. A better strategy is what does distinguish us? How do we want to be different?
You have some questions that you ask that I thought were really interesting in terms of that it's really important that you have. It's called here's a simple test to check whether your team understands your strategic intent. I'm just going to read what you say. I don't know why I'm trying to make it up myself. First one is, can your team members give you one or two sentence description of how your company distinguishes itself? Can they tell you the top 2 or 3 things a company must be great at or must get better at to be successful? And can they tell you how the previous 2 answers translate into the critical 3 to 5 things they must accomplish to contribute to the execution of the strategy? I think these 3 questions are really, really powerful. And I think people need to ask them, what is, in your experience, the answers that you find as, the founder and president of WhiteWater Consulting? What do you find when you ask the CEOs to ask this question of their team members?
Well, shockingly, the most frequent answer we hear from people, not necessarily from the CEOs, but the people in the organization, is on each question, we don't have a clue. We don't have a clue. And, oh yeah, we don't have a clue. and then you look back at the senior leaders in the organization, and they may have a clue. They may have a thought, but maybe they've just never been able to articulate it particularly clearly. Okay, option 1. Option 2 is there are times where it's the classic, and it almost goes to the culture of communication gear. Well, we told them once, we showed them on the PowerPoint. I don't understand why they don't get it. And so that begins to create the gulf in driving strategy to results. If people don't know what the strategy is or have some sense, more importantly, even if the frontline team member who's manufacturing a product or shipping something out the door, or is the customer service rep answering the phones, even if they can't articulate it perfectly, do they know their role in the show? What it is that they're supposed to be good at that ultimately adds up to the strategy that contributes to the success of the strategy of the organization, right? And that's what we're really after.
Yeah, you talk about the thought starter questions, and that one in the middle is how well can team members at every level of your organization describe their role in executing the strategy? And I think that's a really important question, because I think it serves 2 purposes. One is it identifies how clear your strategy is, but I think secondly is it identifies more clearly the person's purpose in the company when it comes to strategy.
Absolutely. And I know we're going to get into this when we start talking about the performance gears, but that's really step 1 in trying to figure out how do you align individual and team performance to the company strategy, is just give me a sense of what that strategy is. What do we have to do to be successful? And then what's my role in the show? And I was actually chatting with a friend of mine earlier today, and she made the great point. I think people just want the opportunity to earn a living and be in an environment where they're treated with respect. And to that I added, I think it maybe goes beyond that a little bit, which is people want the opportunity to really make a contribution. And as leaders in organizations, we have to give them that opportunity. And sometimes I think we just suck the air out of it, right? We suck the life out of people, and we don't give them the opportunity, starting with, hey, what's the strategy and what's everybody's role in the show? Starting there, then really creates the opportunity for people to contribute.
Yeah, no, I'm going to agree with you 100%. And I would strongly say that, the opportunity to make a living is maybe important up front. But then when people get a paycheck after paycheck and then they cannot figure out where their contribution is,
right?
I call it their how. How does what I do fit into the world in a bigger way? You know,
Mhm.
I think when people can't figure that out, I think that's when they struggle, to want to stay, because then what they do is you find a lot of people who job hop just for money,
Right.
but they never
Sure.
find a purpose, right?
Sure. Right. If I think it's a great point, Jay. If we don't articulate some kind of a vision, if we don't articulate some kind of strategy about how we want to be special to our customers, what's going to make us different, and then if people don't have a significant role in the show and help trying to create that, to your point, now I'm really just trading time for money. I can trade time for money with you, or I can trade time for money with the company across the street or around the corner. If it's just trading time for money, then I become a commodity, and I'm just going to go look for the best money, not necessarily the best environment to be successful in.
Right. You talk about evaluating strategy from the customer's perspective, and I really want to talk about this for a little bit, because I don't know that when we put a strategy together, that we're always thinking about the customer. I think we do get a little bit of business selfishness where we're putting a strategy together for profitability, but not necessarily evaluating our strategy from the customer's perspective. And you ask a question, you say, how does your perspective, what creates competitive advantage compared to what your customers think? And talk to us a little bit more about that.
Sure. I was actually talking to somebody last week, and they were talking about, we got on that whole topic of, what strategy, and we go with look, people have all different, you use the word strategy in a lot of different ways.
Right.
We got our IT strategy, and we've got our human resource strategy, and we got this strategy. All of that is good. When we talk strategy, in particular in the book, and in particular in driving that strategy to results, we're using the classic Michael Porter definition. You and I talked about this a little bit last time,
Mm-hmm.
of how do we position ourselves in the marketplace to create competitive advantage, making explicit decisions about what we're going to do to create that competitive advantage, and on the other side of that coin, the things we're not going to do, and then shaping all of the activities in the organization to deliver on that competitive advantage, that unique value that we create in the marketplace. And what I find, and I was talking about that person that I was talking to just last week, it was really a novel concept. They said to me, well, how do you do that? I said, this is going to sound really trite. It's going to sound like really fundamental blocking and tackling, but you have to go talk to your customers, either the customers you have today, or the customers that you want to grow with, or maybe it's some customers that you've lost because they didn't perceive value in what you were doing, and get from their perspective, what is it that you do well relative to the other choices that they have? What causes them to choose you versus anybody else, right? Or in some cases, what causes them to choose your competition instead of you? And maybe it's just not for the products and services you provide, but asking them questions like, okay, describe to me the best supplier you have. What is it that they do? What is it that they're doing to create value for you? And when you take all of that information, you start getting a pretty clear picture of, hey, where are we pretty much the same as everybody else? What are some things that our competition does better than us? And maybe, hopefully for you, what are some things that you do better than the competition that you can find ways to leverage?
Yeah, I think first of all, Michael Porter's book, Competitive Advantage, which sits on my bookshelf, and is a great reference book, is first of all still brilliant. Written in 1983, I think it was, but still brilliant. And I think still taught in Harvard business schools. I think, though, the idea that we've got to start our strategy with the customer is just, or the client, depending on what your business is, I think is just so critical, because if we do not, if we don't look at it from their perspective, there is no way whatever we try to execute is going to work effectively. It can't, can it?
Right. No, certainly not for the long term. Now, look, I think we both know there are a lot of startup companies out there where somebody gets a great idea for a product, and they're maybe not really thinking about what it is that creates competitive advantage. They just create some product or service that people just have to have, that's new. It creates a new category, whatever it might be. And they take off like a rocket. That's great for a while. The question then, how does that become sustainable? And then there's that point where you have to begin to look at it very much from the market and customer point of view. What are people demanding from us, from others, or what would they like to have that they don't have today, that there's a need that we can fulfill that would be unique and different than what our competitors provide.
That's awesome. His name is Shawn Ryan. The book's entitled Get in Gear. You're listening to him here on A New Direction. Folks, I have two amazing sponsors. I talk about them every single week. Epic Physical Therapy. Listen, they're my physical therapists. They work with everybody. If you've just come out of surgery, if you're a professional athlete, if you're not a professional athlete and you just want to move and feel better, they will help you get better. They'll help you get to meet your goals. You know what they do? They have a strategy that's for your individual needs of what you want to accomplish. Then they execute that strategy, right, by helping you so that you get the results that you want from your body. You know what? They got in gear, didn't they? I think they did. You know what? So you listen, when you're ready for your epic relief, your epic recovery, and your epic results, go to epicpt.com. It's EPICPT.com. Doesn't get any better than that. All right. And then Linda Craft and Team Realtors. You want to talk about a strategy, execution, and results. She's been at the top of the real estate game for over 35 years. She has a strategy. And you know what her strategy is? Relationships. Develop customer relationships and maintain those relationships over the course of time, and do everything that you can to support and support them in every way to get them what they want and need in terms of their home wishes and desires. And how do they execute that? By being the consummate professionals, right? And they do that by making sure they do the right things every day, right? Staying on top of it, making sure things are good. They do the marketing. They have one of the best in the world when it comes to internet and social media marketing. It's what they do. They do a great job, promote. And then finally, you know what? They get the results that people want. And that is, right, the biggest purchase that people make probably in a lifetime personally is their home. And they help people satisfy that all over the world. So when you're ready for your epic results, Epic PT, I'm going to give it to Linda Craft too. But when you're ready for those great results, go to Linda Craft and team. Go to lindacraft.com. That's LINDACRAFT.com. And we're back here with Shawn Ryan and his book, Get in Gear. I'm smiling because I've had a little fun on the promos with your book, and it just happened to work. It worked. It did. Let's shift gears. See what I did there.
Nice.
Before we get into the gears, let's talk about results, because I think sometimes what happens is we focus so much on the result that we miss the first two pieces, strategy and execution. But the results do matter. Profit matters. When you talk about execution in terms of executing through these gears, are we talking mostly about profit, or what are the results that we're really looking for?
Great question. We actually think, obviously, profit for a for-profit organization is extremely important, right? And you could make an argument, and we don't have to go into the whole philosophy of it, that's the theory of the firm. You're supposed to generate profits for the owners, for the whether owners, shareholders, whatever they are. It's certainly a big deal. But I think there's some other results that you have to think about at the top of the list. So you're trying to deliver results for the owners. To be really successful, you've got to deliver results for your customers. What is it that they're looking for? It kind of ties back to the whole strategy thing of what makes it unique. What's your brand? Why would somebody want to pick up the phone and call you, right? And so you have to deliver results for them. Good quality products and services delivered on time in some kind of competitive pricing that makes sense, that's value added for them. You have to deliver results for your team, right? I think there are just so many things. First of all, so many people are having a hard time hiring people these days. You got to create environments where people want to come to work, and you give people the opportunities to work in a values-based environment where they can come to work every day and try to contribute their best and have the opportunity to be able to do that. When you look at, say, employee engagement, every survey of employee engagement, the statistics are completely depressing, right? 15% of people actually report that they're psychologically engaged in the work that they do for their organization. That's horrific. You can literally not try and get 15%. And so I think the idea of delivering results for your team, safe environment, respectful environment, creating a great place where people can come to work and do their best every day. I think that's an important component, because you can't do great things for your customers, and you ultimately can't do the best thing for your shareholders, your owners, if you're not doing great things for your team and attracting and keeping the kind of talent you need to be successful.
Ooh.
And then I think we're all, the last has become incredibly, well, it's always been important. It's become more obvious to all of us over the last couple of years, is the whole ESG thing. We are, if we're running companies, the company is in of itself a citizen, and has to make a contribution, from an environmental and a social and a governance kind of a standpoint. We have to operate in ways that contribute to, the future of, our environment or whatever else that we're trying to contribute to. And I think there are results there that you have to pay attention to. So it's really kind of those four categories that business leaders probably ought to be thinking about.
I got to tell you, all of them are good, but the team piece is really, really, really powerful, because you may have to ask yourself a question. If you're having difficulties hiring, what kind of reputation do you have? That your results, you may be producing results that are creating already a reputation that people don't want to work for you.
Right.
And you probably need to pay attention to that, right? Because the truth of the matter is, there are still businesses out there that people are clamoring to work for.
Yes.
Right. And you do have to ask yourself that question. Why are they working for my why do they so willing to work for my competitor, but they're not willing to work for me?
Absolutely. Right.
And it goes right back to that strategy question, what's in it for your employee, basically. I mean, I have no other, I don't know if it's the correct way to phrase it, but I mean, if your employees aren't getting what they want, and people have a reputation going, I don't feel it's a safe environment. I don't feel that it's an environment I'm going to flourish in, or whatever the reasons are.
Right.
That's a result that you need to pay attention to.
Absolutely. Right. If you can't hire people, if you can hire people, we've seen this recently with some clients of ours, where they're pretty good at attracting the talent that they think that they want. And then and this is different for them, a significant portion of their talent leaves this new talent leaves after 6 or 9 months. Well, to your point, that's an incredibly important metric. That's an incredibly important indicator that says, hey, there's something going on here, that these people that we want to attract, that we're actually successful at attracting, are choosing to go someplace else after 6, 8, 12 months. What's going on? And we've had a great, phenomenal, wonderful culture for a long time that people who've been here for 10 or 20 years love being a part of. But something's going on with these new people that we're attracting in. We need to take a look at ourselves.
That's beautiful. So let's dig into the gears. All right.
Sure.
Last time we were together, we talked about the first 3 gears. Right. First gear, by the way, these are environmental gears. I'm gonna just give people an overview of what we covered, so you can go back and listen to the previous show. We covered the environmental gears. The first gear is right, getting the right people in the right roles with the right capabilities. And then the second is aligning the architecture, making sure that the organization's systems, structures, process, and culture all shape effort toward execution of the strategy. And then the third environmental gear is a culture of communication, ensuring that communication up and down the line and across the organization is really well done, so that everyone has the most timely and accurate information to make decisions and take action. The last 4 gears are what you call performance gears. And they are the gears that you say, and I'm quoting you, provide the linkages that connect strategy to execution to results. So let's talk about the first of the performance gears, and that is set result-oriented goals. So let's talk about this because I've had a lot of people talk about goal setting, and one of the things that people talk about goals is that first of all, 10% of your employees don't even 10% of your employees maybe know how to set them, 90% don't, and that you probably are not doing a good job at it anyway. So let's talk about setting result-oriented goals and how to make that happen.
Sure. So the whole part when we really start driving that strategy and my role in the show to execution, the first place we have to capture that is in some sort of goal. What am I supposed to accomplish? And so that's what we mean by that gear around setting result-oriented goals. So to your point, Jay, I think you nailed the data perfectly, which is just in general, 90% of the population people don't have goals. Only 10% of the folks out there actually set goals for themselves in their own personal lives or in their work lives. And I think the research is that then 3% in total, so 30% of the 10%, 3% total, actually then think about the activities that I need to undertake to achieve my goals. So, and we talk about in the book, and I think we talked about this a little bit last time, the idea of playing 5-on-5. And it's really interesting. So we ask, and we've done this tens of thousands of times now. We've asked individual performers in organizations to write down what they think their top 5 goals are. What are they supposed to accomplish for their organization? Then we ask their leaders to write down what they think the top 5 goals are for each of their team members. So we've got 2 lists of 5, a leader's goal and a performer's goal. And it happens at every level of the organization. So that linkage all the way down. So 2 lists of 5, theoretically, they should match, right?
Right.
On average, how many do match? Well, if we give liberal credit for the language that people use, it rounds out to about 2 out of the 5 goals actually match over those tens of thousands of repetitions. So 40% of the time, people are working on stuff that they think their bosses are important, and 60% of the time, frankly, it's a complete crapshoot. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. So start there. We've just got to get alignment, even if it's in categories. Let's forget results for a second. If it's just goal categories,
right?
We got to get alignment, right?
Right. Well, here's the problem, and I just wrote about this on LinkedIn. I think a week ago or so, and I wrote that one of the biggest problems that you have with your goals, and I think you probably inspired me on this, is that the business is dictating the goals for the employee. And so then what happens is the employee has no emotional investment into those goals.
Right.
And what you're really saying here is if you're going to align your individual and your team goals and your business goals, you need to find out what motivates them, because motivation, if you want goal motivation, it's got to be something that your people are going to want to invest their time into. You can't dictate to them what the goal is and then just assume that they're just going to achieve it. There has to be some sort of an emotional investment. There has to be something that has meaning to them if it's going to be a goal. And I think your 5-on-5 is really, really, really critical here, because I think when the CEO or the manager, whoever it is that's doing the goal setting for the year, I think you need to have a comparison, and you need to get on the same page, because if there's no alignment of the goals, this gear can stop it all, can't it?
Absolutely. I mean, just think about it. If we're not aligned on the goals, then pretty much everything that happens after that is going to be messiest, right? It's just going to be a big mess. So this is absolutely the cornerstone to driving strategy to results when it gets to whether I'm a senior vice president reporting to the CEO, or I'm some division leader reporting to a senior VP or the next level down. If you don't have that linkage all the way down through the organization, then there's almost zero chance that the person out at the front line is going to be working on the right stuff. Now, people have work and they have activities to do, and they're going to go through those activities. And again, maybe 40% of the time it lines up. But if they're just trading time for money. They're not psychologically putting their brains into it. So are we getting the best that they have to offer? If we don't cascade effectively, if we don't have good quality conversations that engage people rather than merely dictate to people. Now, it's not just completely, hey, people get to do whatever they want to do, right?
Right.
But it goes back to where you started the top of the show with, which is, do we understand the purpose? Do we understand the strategy? Does everybody understand their role in the show, so that we can make it an interactive conversation versus hey, I'm just gonna delegate this to you. I'm gonna dictate to you what your goals are, and your job is just to go do some stuff, right?
Right. So you talk about in this particular chapter on chapter 5, set SET, by the way, which I thought was important, result-oriented goals, because you talk about set goals, and that's actually an acronym for start, end, and time frame.
Yes.
And so I want to talk about that, and then I want you to talk about that, but I also want you to address, because right after that in a subheading you have why set result-oriented goals are smarter than SMART goals, because I think we've had a number of people on the show talk about SMART goals, right?
Of course.
And so, but let's talk about set goals and why they are smarter than the SMART goals.
Sure. Okay, we can do that. Let me before we dive into set, let's talk a little bit about result-oriented goals. One of the things we find after we start getting alignment, we play 5-on-5 and we get alignment on, let's say, goal categories. The second challenge that we have is that so many people's goals, if they have any of them at all, are defined in terms of activities, not the results that they're supposed to achieve. So let's take server in a restaurant. Ask the servers, what are you supposed to do? Well, I'm supposed to serve tables. I'm supposed to wait tables. I'm supposed to take orders. I'm supposed to get people seated. I'm supposed to get them drinks as quickly as I possibly can. I'm supposed to rotate the tables, all that kind of stuff. It's a whole series of activities that people perform. And then we go ask restaurant managers, what are the critical goals for the people that we call servers? They have a completely different list. Their list is generate profits for the restaurant. And servers are like, what? They want me to do what? And the restaurant managers are like, we want you to generate profits for the restaurant. And the servers are like, why didn't you tell us? And the managers are like, don't know, but that's what we want you to do. And so you think about that. As a server now, if you tell me that my job is to generate profits for the results, or better, if when we get the start end time frame, we want to increase profits in this restaurant from $1 million. I don't know. Let's go. We want to grow our profits by 25%, just to dimensionalize, take the dimensions out of it over the course of the next year. Well, as a server, what do you do to increase profits? You sell drinks and desserts. Right. You sell the high margin stuff.
Right.
And you sell the high margin stuff. The more drinks you sell, the more desserts you sell. So now, do they still have to do all those activities? Absolutely. They still have to seat people. They still have to take orders. They have to make sure the orders are accurate. They have to do it relatively timely and efficiently. They got to flip tables fast. But now they know that generating profit is driven in part by how quickly they flip tables, but also the number of drinks and desserts that they sell. And now they can channel their activities, their focus, to what it takes to generate profit for the restaurant. And if we go through any number of jobs in any number of places, what we see is many people's jobs are defined in terms of activities, not the results. That's a critical difference. Because as soon as I know what the results are that I'm supposed to achieve, and if you give me the latitude and the resources, well, now I own my job. I can decide within some boundaries what activities are most important, which ones are least important, so that I can do a better job of generating results, not just mindlessly working on activities that don't matter. So that part of, first of all, let's get goal alignment. Secondly, let's get things in a result-oriented format. Really, it creates ownership, it drives responsibility, and it just makes sure that the things that people are focused on a point instead of just mindlessly going through stuff. So then we get to set. So we know what the end, maybe we should now know, in set, start, and time frame, when we set the goals in terms of what we're trying to get to, Now we know what the end is. I know what I'm supposed to generate in the way of profit for the restaurant, or I'm a salesperson. What revenue or what profits am I supposed to generate? If I'm in manufacturing, we're trying to drive conversion costs from some number to some other number in a time frame. I know what I'm trying to accomplish. What set does for us is tells me where I'm starting from, and tells me where I'm trying to get to, that end result that I'm trying to achieve. That creates the gap. Now I know how big the challenge is, how big the mountain is that I have to climb. And then the time frame just really creates a level of urgency. We all get more energized when there's a time frame. Again, I was talking to another friend of mine earlier today, and she's decided to write a book. And she said, I'm gonna write a book, and I'm gonna have it done by October 2022. Well, you start thinking about that. You got an end result you're trying to get to. You're starting from nothing, not a single word on paper. That goal of having that book written by October 2022, that creates a whole lot of energy. And you have to start thinking about, what are the activities and what sequence am I going to have to undertake to be able to have that book ready in it just literally a year from now, right? And so the time frame is important, because it creates, as we all know, man, how much harder did we work the night before the exam, right? When we knew we had to go we all did that.
Oh, we all did that.
The time frame is really critical. And so why are set goals smarter than smart goals? I think I was being a little bit cute, because everybody knows SMART goals, right? Specific, measurable, attainable, and relevant, and time bound. And why are set goals in the strategy, execution, results framework smarter than SMART goals? First of all, they're connected to the strategy. So they're smarter because it's not just any goal. It's goals that are connected in my role to contributing to the strategy. And so we're not going to have goals that don't matter. You can have SMART goals that really are kind of dumb in the sense that they don't really matter. Right. And of course, measurable kind of falls by the wayside, because our next year, we're going to talk about building visible scorecards, which is the essence of measurement. We don't need, I would actually challenge the concept of attainable. I think most goals should be attainable. We do talk about in set result-oriented goals that some goals should completely stretch the organization.
Right.
There's some things where we're just, okay, we're going to be 10% better next year than we were this year. And we're going to be 10. Now, you've got some company coming into your industry that they're completely disrupting it, and they're 2,000% better, and you're 10% better. Well, you're out of business. Okay. And so there should be some goals that just blow everybody's mind. So I think attainable is a negotiable term. And of course, the goals are going to be relevant. We shouldn't even think about having goals that aren't relevant, don't tie back to our strategy, don't matter, don't help us get to any kind of critical result. So I think I was being a little bit cute in the book, but if you get goals that are set in set format that tie to your strategy, yeah, I think they're a little bit smarter than SMART goals.
That's awesome. His name is Shawn Ryan. The book is entitled Get in Gear, and get your copy anywhere books are sold. Right? That's your execution. You're listening to him here on A New Direction. Hey, folks, real quickly, Epic Physical Therapy, right? One of the ways that they execute their strategy of getting you better, right? Whether it's injury, surgery, you're a professional athlete or wanting to be an athlete, they have the equipment. They have the necessary equipment to help you get better, whether it's the anti-gravity treadmill, the Normatec compression sleeves, the Game Ready. They understand, and they set goals for you as well, so that you can achieve in the time frame that you need to get yourself back to where you want to be. That's why they are epic. So when you're ready for your epic relief, your epic recovery, and your epic results, just go to epicpt.com. It's EPICPT.com. And Linda Craft and Team Realtors. Well, what are they? How did they set goals? Well, they have a goal for each client. They set a goal for you. They understand. They want to get to know through communicating with you right up front. What is your goals for the selling or purchasing of your home? Get all that up front, and then communicate, right? Because You know what? Communication is the breakfast of champions. Ken Blanchard said that, but it's in Getting Gear too, written by Shawn Ryan. So listen, when you're ready to sell your home and buy your home, regardless of where you're at in the world, start with the Legends of Real Estate. They have legendary customer service, is what their clients say. And you can go to lindacraft.com. It's LINDACRAFT.com. And we're back here on A New Direction with Shawn Ryan. Like what I did there, Shawn? Did you look how I pulled that in there for you?
That's wonderful. That's awesome. Yeah.
Consider we did it. Okay, so let's move to chapter 6, which is the next. Is called build visible scorecards, improving performance by keeping score. What are we talking about here, and what should they kind of look like?
Sure. So I always pose this question to groups. If I'm driving down the street and I stop at a stoplight and I look over to my right, I see 2 basketball courts right next to each other. Kids are playing basketball on both courts. On one court, they're keeping score. Now, I don't know which one's which, but on one court, I'm told the kids are keeping score. And on the other court, they're not keeping score. They're just playing and having fun. How quickly do we think that we would be able to observe those 2 courts, those 2 games being played, and figure out which court that they're keeping score on and which court they're not keeping score on?
Pretty quickly.
Yeah,
you'll be able to distinguish the 2 really quickly.
Absolutely. And why? Well, because the level of intensity, the communication, the way people work together, the feedback that they give each other on the court where they're keeping score, and you have to win the game to be able to keep the court and keep on playing. The level of intensity is just going to be greater than it is on that court where people are just, they're not keeping score. They're just jacking up threes. Nobody's paying any attention to anything. Now, everybody could be having fun, not disputing that. But the level of intensity when we keep score goes up. So then contrast that with when I walk into most organizations and I ask people, how you doing in your job? How you doing? How you performing? And the most common answer by far is, I think I'm doing okay. Okay. Why do you think you're doing okay? Well, I'm not getting in any trouble. You got a scorecard? You got any feedback? You got any data? Nope. But I think I'm doing okay. And so they're kind of just getting through it. So why are scorecards important? And we're talking specifically about the scorecards here related to hitting those goals that we've set for them.
Right.
Because it energizes effort. And we want people to have scorecards. We kind of break scorecards into 3 categories: good, better, best. And at minimum, good scorecards give people the feedback that they need so that they can change the outcome of the game while it's still being played. Right. So it doesn't do me any good. And I learned this the hard way. I was leading the turnaround on a resort. I learned this the hard way. It doesn't do me any good to look at and we were doing turnaround on this resort that was failing. And we knew that we were spending a lot of money every month on labor costs that wasn't justified by the amount of business, the amount of activity, the amount of revenue that we were generating. But across 1,200 team members spread across 14,000 acres, we couldn't see that until we saw the P&L statement that came out 10 days after the close of the month. We could absolutely see in stark terms then that we'd spent how many ever hundred thousands of dollars that we shouldn't have spent on labor costs, money that we didn't have to spend. And so we'd gather our 50 leaders around. We'd talk about the need to get labor costs down. Everybody in the room would shake their heads and they'd nod their heads, yes. And yes, we have to do that. They all got it. They had no tools, none. They could not change the outcome of the game while it was being played because the only tool we had, the only scorecard we had came out 10 days after the close of the month. That game's already been over. In some cases, it's been over for 40 days. And so we ended up having to invent, because we didn't have time to invest in expensive IT systems and things, we had people start reporting the number of hours on a spreadsheet at the end of every day. How many labor hours did you have today? And each of those 50 unit managers had to report them by 1 o'clock in the morning. And by 9 o'clock the next morning, we gave them a report showing what their labor costs were relative to the revenue that was generated. We were able to give them a pretty good forecast of what the revenue was going to be today. And so how quickly do you think they started adjusting their labor costs once we started giving them that report?
Right. Really quickly.
Quick. Yeah. Super quickly. Less than 24 hours. Literally, we gave them the first report at noon on day one. And by that afternoon, they were making better decisions. And within 2 days, they got right to the numbers that they should have been. And in that first month, we saved everything that we thought we should save merely by giving them a scorecard that created the visibility so that they could change the outcome of the game while it was still being played. Right. So that's good scorecard. Better scorecards give you information about what's my performance versus what my goals are. Right. So if I'm supposed to sell $50,000 worth of stuff this month and it's the third of the month and I'm at 3,000 and I'm supposed to be at 50,000. And then the other comparison is what's the best month I've ever had? Let's say it's 75,000. Or if I'm in a manufacturing environment and we know we've got to get to 98% first pass quality and we're at 95% so far this month and our best ever has been 99.3, that gives me context for the number. It's not just some measure that's abstract from reality. It's not just so I'm at $5,000 sales. I don't know what that means, but if you tell me that my goal is to get to 50,000 by the end of the month, all right, now I've got context for it. Right. And then the last component of visible scorecards, when they're really great, the best ones show trends and comparisons over time. So not just a point in time, how we do in this week or this month, but how does this compare over where we've been over the last 6 months, 12 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years, so that we can see the trends and how do those trends connect with each other, right? And so that really gives people information that says, okay, I can change this over here. We can do a little bit better in generating margins, but then that may drive customers away. That may drive our market share down. And so we can look at what's the relationship between things when we give people the opportunity to look at the trends over time.
Love it. I love it. All right, let's bounce to the next one called define the performance drivers to critical activities that lead to the right results. What are we talking about here?
Yeah. Okay. So we talked about the server a little bit ago about waiting tables and taking orders and all that kind of stuff. Well, you do have to do some stuff, right? And so we've got the goals. We want to generate profit, but now we got to figure out what is it that we do that actually moves the needles on the scorecard and helps us achieve the goals. And so the performance drivers, that's kind of a generic term that we created to identify what are those critical activity, tasks, behaviors that you need to undertake to help you hit your goals. And here's the deal. What we believe is that in all walks of life, almost everything that we do, the stuff that I do, the stuff that you do, the things that leaders do, the things that frontline customer service reps do, or the people setting up a production line to have the highest quality, most efficient production, or salespeople, or violinists, or defensive backs in the NFL. Those critical performance drivers, they're probably 2 or 3 or 4 things that the best do that are a little bit different than what everybody else does. Now, there are probably a lot of things that people do similarly, but there are 2 or 3 critical things that the best performers do. And if we can figure out what those things are, and then we can teach them to everybody else, and we can help them master the performance, master the execution of those performance drivers, then everybody is better off, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That, and it's not always easy to get them to do all those things, is it? I mean, but I mean, they're absolutely critical to the success of the individual and the organization.
Absolutely true. So part of what we talk about after we define the performance drivers is that idea of tracking the execution of the performance drivers. So now this is a scorecard, but it's a little bit different than the end result scorecards we talked about before. So best example I've got is my weight has bopped around, over the years. I think I'm at 177 or so today. I've been as high as 220. 220, not healthy for me. That whole idea of I'd like to see my younger son graduate from university. He's 14. If I really want to see him graduate from university, 225 is probably not a good place for me to be. So we all know if I want to drive my weight from say 220 to 175, there are two critical performance drivers that all of us know. Watch how much food you eat and watch how much exercise you get. We all know that. Yet people really struggle a lot of times being able to get from start to end within the time frame they want to. For me personally, and I think for a lot of people, what it comes down to is the idea of the tracking of the execution of the performance driver. So I've actually got the graph, the real graph that's in the book illustrates this, but it shows that when I track how much food I eat, my weight goes down. As soon as I stop tracking on a daily basis how much food I'm consuming, whether you do, popular weight management programs with it count points, or you want to count calories, or whatever works for you. What I know for me, and I think for a lot of people, is when I'm not tracking, my weight starts to gravitate up. And then when I start tracking, it starts gravitating back down again. It drives back down as soon as I start tracking. And so knowing what those performance drivers are, and then tracking the execution of it as simply as you possibly can. For a salesperson, tracking sales and sales calls and next steps in a CRM system, or on the, on a 3x5 card. I don't care what your system looks like, but simple and elegant that works for you, so that you know that you're executing on the things that are important to your success.
Love it. We're running out of time here, and I know we've got one more. So, and it's really the important one, but I want to get through it real quickly before we close. It's called Follow Up, Follow Through, and it's entitled The Glue That Holds It All Together, and it's really pretty impressive. So, can you give us a quick overview? I hate doing that to you, but can we do that?
Jay, I probably did it to myself. So two concepts in the idea of follow up, follow through. The first one everybody's going to get, which is the idea of accountability. There ultimately has to be accountability, some kind of consequences that go along with performance. And accountability is not a bad word. It's a good word. It just means when I do really well, I get the benefits of that. And when I don't perform as well, then there are going to be some other kind of consequences that might not be as cool as when I knock the cover off the ball. So accountability. But the concept that we have in follow up, follow through before we get to accountability is the idea of generating learning. I can't guarantee you every day that the goals of every team and every individual are completely connected to the strategy. I don't know every day that the scorecards are exactly right. I don't know that the performance drivers are going to be right, or that people are executing on the performance drivers as effectively, or they've even got the skills and capabilities. So when we're looking at performance and we want people to account for their performance, the responsibility should be on the performer, not the leader, to go account for my performance. The first thing we want people to do is to look at what's my performance versus my goals, and let's talk about, if it's not online, why is it not online? Is there something in the gears, any of the other 7 gears that's not aligned, that would be helpful for me being able to perform my best? That's the generate learning part. And then ultimately I am accountable and responsible for performance. So if I've been given everything that I need to be able to be successful and I'm not being successful, that's on me. That's not on somebody else. So generate learning and then create accountability, just the consequences that go along with the performance that I generate, or my behavior, relative to the values of our organization.
Beautiful. Told you he was great, didn't I? Told you. That's why we brought him back. Getting Gears, the book. Get it everywhere books are sold. Amazon. I'll have a write-up, folks. It's the show. Listen, you're in control of your emotions. You're in control of your attitude, and you are in control of your effort. Take control of it. Doesn't matter what's happening in your world around you. You always have control. I will be back next week with another great guest who's got another great book, and it's going to be another great show. And you know what? As I say to the people in Japan, sayonara.